And welcome back, everybody, to the HCT Winter Championship. I'm TJ, joined by the Admiral. That's Admirable. And we have the pleasure of bringing you guys the first match of the day, and it is going to be the winner's match for Group A. One of these players moving on to the quarterfinals, but the loser of this match, still in it, gets to fight in the decider matchup for the group. I'm looking forward to it. Admirable, it's going to be a great day. How you feeling?
I'm feeling fantastic. And if you're one of the players right now, I think you got to be feeling great about this. Even if the match doesn't go your way, you still get another chance. And that's the luxury you buy yourself when you win that initial match that took place in there. I was going to talk a lot about Viper, but to just kind of hit on it quickly, for those of you who've been following, you know, of course, he's qualified for the World Championships. He's had a fantastic year on the tour stop scene this year. And he's been doing it with decks that are really in his own style. That's really, I think, a lot of what Viper's about, is he's not afraid to trust in his own gut when it comes to building deck lists. Even looking at this playoffs where he brought a deck that ended up getting dubbed Peanut Shaman because they said it was the nuts. It was a very strange looking deck that still featured Shutterwalk when you couldn't infinite combo with it, and performed very well. And here, you know, it's not really much of an exception to that. Malygos Rogue and Murloc Paladin, two decks that have been nigh extinct in the metagame. For Yueying, though, I do want to talk a little bit more about him because he's been, you know, quite unknown to me over the last year or so. He actually took second place the 2019 Gold Series Grand Finals, which is how he qualified for this event. And in 2018, he actually won the Gold Series in Sunzo, and it was the Sunzo champion as a result of that. And to me, that is such a tough tournament to win because the size of the Gold Series tournaments are absolutely massive, and all the best players in China play in those things.
Yeah, it's a really impressive resume from a Chinese player that we haven't seen much of. But talking a little bit about the overall lineups, yesterday I wasn't too worried for Viper, but this lineup from Yueying is different from what we're used to seeing so far in the championship. It doesn't have an identity, really. It's not an aggro lineup, but it has a few fast decks like Oddro. It's not an anti-control lineup, but it has some anti-control classes like Malygos Druid. It's just a kind of a little bit all over the place, and Viper, his Odd Mage is banned, and he has to play Murloc Paladin and Malygos Rogue into two decks, which I don't think it's that well positioned against, which is the Control Priest, which can put together a lot of damage, and of course that Hunter, which is just overall been a solid deck.
Yeah, I definitely would think that just from a pure lineup perspective that Viper is at a disadvantage. But all of his decks feature the ability to have these draws that just win the game.
And this is the start of one of them.
Yeah, we're definitely looking at the start of something that could be really big trouble for Yueying. You know, Viper here has brought Murloc Paladin, and it's about as straightforward, recklessly aggressive as you can imagine. 2 copies of Divine Favor, it caps out at 2 Call to Arms Leroy and Sunkeeper Tarim.
Yep. I played around with this deck a little bit leading up to the event, and I actually really liked it, but it's a lot more feast or famine than the Odd Paladin, for instance. It has the potential for blazing fast starts, and it can go a lot taller with, you know, say, Blessing of Kings and just Murloc War Leaders and Gentle Megasaurs to buff up small boards to a large size, but it doesn't have the longevity that Odd Paladin could have, and it doesn't have the board present once it falls behind, because your hero power only gives you 1 Silver Hand Recruit. So,
well, I don't think Viper has much interest in hero powering with this deck. You know, starting out very early on, Murloc Tidecaller, this is one of the scariest minions in the game you face against because you know what the possibilities on follow-up are. Yueying goes with Coin, Crackling Razor Maw to try to contest, which I think is very wise. And it just so happens that Viper has got the goods to really punish this. So, you know, even looking at this tournament, the Rockpool Hunter and the Righteous Protector, Yueying is already in a tough spot to be able to answer what Viper's going to be onto. Now, he does have Unleash the Hounds, so he gets to end up making trades, but almost any way you slice this, Viper's going to be left with something on board for a Gentle Megasaur turn on the follow-up. This has been a fantastic start for Viper.
Yeah, this deck is very lean. It just runs 2-ofs of everything except the legendaries with Leroy and Sunkeeper. As you mentioned, even double Divine Favor, which against Hunter traditionally not a great tool to draw too many cards, but with Master's Call, a lot of times Hunter is holding on to a hand size of like 4, 5, 6, so you can usually get some value to that. So it does, that's where the inconsistency in the longevity comes out, because you don't want to hero power. You're oftentimes playing out as much as your hand as possible, hoping you draw Divine Favor, or ending the game before that even matters.
Yeah, I mean, with the aggro decks, there's always like sometimes little tricky things that you have to do with like sequencing and like making trades at times. And Yueying here, I think, is going to end up taking a bit of a wiser choice in just using the Animal Companion here instead of the Unleash the Hounds. With Timberwolf in hand, Yueying feels very confident that he can fight against a Gentle Megasaur in this spot. Oftentimes, you're going to find Viper taking options that are like Death Rattle, make some tokens, or like Divine Shields or what have you, and you're just going to need a way to fend this off. And so here, Viper ends up taking health because he needs to battle this Misha on board. So Yueying's effectively just buying himself more time and waiting until he can get that right Unleash the Hounds Timberwolf combo and try to wipe out the board and leave Viper stranded with a picked apart situation.
Yeah. And Viper's going to think about this a while. I like the trade with the Righteous Protector because of the threat of Unleash the Hounds. There is only one copy in Yueying's deck, however, but it's a card that's so valuable against any type of aggressive Paladin. So you can assume that that's what Yueying's looking for in the early game, along with the Spring Paws and the Crackling Razor Maws.
Yeah.
And
I think there is a lot of merit here for Viper actually using the Murloc to value trade in this situation. Okay. You are forcing Yueying to have almost exactly Unleash the Hounds to fight this back, and there's only a single copy of that in Yueying's deck. But at the same time, it's important to keep your Murlocs healthy so that they can stick around and you can use Blessing of Might, draw Blessing of Kings, and just overall have them chip out more damage. And so that was the debate there for Viper. I think there's merit for the 2/6, but I think I'd like using the 1/1 more.
Glad we arrived at the same conclusion there. That's admirable.
Why are you glad about it?
Just we're on the same page today.
I kind of like when we're on different pages.
All right. I hated that trade.
Me too.
No.
I'm glad we're on the same page,
I'm glad we're on the same page today, Admirable.
And Yueying going to continue to bide time with the second Animal Companion.
He's going to take a lot of damage in the interim, though, which is what I'm worried about.
I'm worried about it, too, but, imagine if Yueying had gone for Unleash the Hounds Timberwolf here. He cedes the tempo right back over to Viper, and that's the disaster situation you're in when you're using your comeback mechanism to simply get to an even position on board. You want to swing the tempo of the game. And to me, that is one of the marks of a player who truly understands the matchup, who understands that it's necessary to take these styles of risks if you're going to succeed in the matchup.
And there's multiple arguments that can be made either way, right? And especially when you're in this high of a stakes event with such great players, is that if you can make plays that your opponent doesn't expect, a lot of times when you're hand reading, you're saying, what's the best play my opponent can make this turn? And then if he does not make that play, you can assume that he does not have that card or that play available. But when you get to a certain level of play, there's an additional level of mind games that goes into it, where your opponent can do the same thing and be like, what's the best play I can make this turn? I'm going to not make that play so that my opponent plays further into it. And that can also be a reason why Yueying holds on to this play to try and hope that Viper goes much wider on board.
Yeah, well, this wasn't much wider.
No, this is...
It's like leveling wars are a very real thing. You have to get pretty, deep down the rabbit hole for that to actually exist. But, here, I think it's really about Yueying just understanding that he needs to have the board actually swing into his favor if he's going to win this one. So, Unleash the Hounds, the Timberwolf, the Dire Mole sits on board, and that's 10 damage represented across the board. So it gets to pick off this Murloc and then start doing away with the rest of them. Looks to me like... I'd be surprised by a Tidecaller kill here, actually. I would love to see Yueying actually get rid of the Hydrologist, so that way it cannot value trade over the Timberwolf.
Yeah, and wise choice there. Divine Favor picked up right as Yueying empties his hand.
That's the other thing, too, is Yueying has been aggressively dumping cards so that the Divine Favor is mitigated by a tremendous amount. But boy, what cards does Viper get from it? Sunkeeper Tarim picked up, and that's maybe one of the cards that can, keep him on that front foot this game.
Yeah, this is a big play here.
This all, mind you, was with Yueying going second and with Viper having as good as a start as he had as well.
Yeah.
But Yueying is at 12, so there's not too much further to go. And if there's one thing I know about Viper, it's that he's going to take his time. Even at its heart of hearts, with this deck being effectively a burn deck, you do want to mitigate your opponent's grand options against you. And so Spring Paw, I think, is the big nod there when he trades off the Timberwolf.
Yeah, and is going to pick up the flanking strike to be able to take full control of the board. These are those swing turns you were talking about. Viper has a weak turn. Yueying capitalizes on it.
Oh,
Call
boy.
to arms!
Oh, boy, that's a huge draw for Viper right now. Righteous Protector to block. He's got a Hydrologist to add, but, in this spot, I think I'd like to see Hero Power so that next turn, Viper can guarantee himself Hydrologist, curate the secret to his needs, and then play Sunkeeper Tarim.
Reporting for duty.
Yueying's in Trub. the official term for it. And that's not going to help.
No, but Master's Call, great pickup. Likely to pick up a Spring Paw here.
The Righteous Protector is the
Oh,
issue.
didn't pick up a Spring Paw.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yueying's done. He can live this turn, but it's not for very long.
No.
You get to kill command a minion. You get to trade over with this Divine Shield. And then Sunkeeper Tarim gets to make some pretty devastating work of what's left of your life total.
Yeah.
And blessing him might. I've never seen Viper take a turn that fast, so I figured he must have drawn some damage.
Yeah, and this is a big win for Viper. I was worried about Murloc Paladin against Control Freeze because of the Dustbreaker and Wild Pyromancer combination. Very anti-aggro, so taking a win with it early and getting that out of the way puts Viper in a fantastic position throughout the rest of this series.
Yep, he's got mid-range Hunter left behind this, and it is a different looking build than what we've seen from the rest of the field, and I'm kind of excited to see what's in there. I'll get to that in a second, but the big one for me now is that Viper has his Malagos rogue, and the Priest is still there to battle with. You know, you mentioned the Priest being a point where that could have been a really big point of struggle for Murloc Paladin, and I totally agree with you. Duskbreaker out of Yueying's Dragon Priest can just dominate that deck. And so now that he has Malagos Rogue to perhaps line up against that bit of a slower build, I think is a massive advantage for him.
Yeah, even Druid, it can get there. This is a Malagos Druid, so not quite as much armor gain as its Togwaggle counterpart. At least the strategies are different. You can't often afford to try and gain that much armor, even if it could be your primary win condition because you give too much time. But definitely a great start for Viper, getting maybe his toughest deck for the matchup out of the way in game number 1. But still a lot of series left to play here in match number 1 of day number 2 at the Winter Championship. We're going to go to a quick break. Don't go anywhere. More Hearthstone right after this.
大家好，我是来自 LF 的Yueying，我是来自中国。我的性格是比较的，可能算是内向，就是如果跟不熟的人的话，会说话比较少，但跟熟人就会比较放得开。我唱歌的话，这个的话就是当你一直输，你可以用唱歌来缓解你的就是那种负面情绪，然后让你接下来的比赛或者是天梯的那种排名的对战中可能会更好。这就算是我自己的爱好吧，就是比较喜欢。然后表演的话也应该不算，就是我可能直播的时候会唱一下歌，只是哼一哼，也不会说刻意去唱。
Would you be willing to sing just a small excerpt of a song?
就我比较内向，所以我在镜头前我可能放不开，所以我觉得不太好。对。Listen to the song here in my heart, a melody I start but can't complete。唱歌一般都是在我直播中，就是我在天梯中上分的时候，如果打的就是有一段时间的连跪，然后会影响我之后的心态嘛，所以我会通过唱歌来缓解我的情绪，不然我会就是一直憋在心。上一个让我特别开心的事嘛，我觉得只有炉石才能会让我特别开心。
I'm Viper. I'm from Magdeburg in Germany. Everything kept on going. Even after I qualified for Worlds, I still wanted to essentially just win the next tournament. I went into every tournament with like the same ambitions. I just wanted to win. I wanted to perform well, and it kind of would be cool to be the role model for other players. In terms of, if you think some deck is good, if you think whatever you're doing is right, then just do it. Just believe in yourself, and sometimes, I don't know, Peanut Shaman is a good deck.
And the Viper is going to the next round, to the championships, in fact.
All of the media stuff that happened from 2016 championship throughout 2018, all the tour stops, then casting the German HCT together with Kamlan sometimes. It's a nice feeling to one time be on the other side talking about, well, what are the players doing right now? What do they think about going for those lineups? And I really enjoy that. I'm regularly streaming beginning this year in December and so on as well. I guess the more prize money I earn, the longer I can try to build up a stream. I really like talking with people, I like teaching them. We actually end up in useful discussions. Those are kind of the fun things besides always competing, always trying to the best and always having to win, when you can just hang out with the community and give something back as well. Yeah, I just really want to keep performing well, I want to keep doing well, and maybe at some point I'm going to wake up and be like, okay, actually it's all going really, really well now. Like always, I'm super grateful for everyone that is supporting me, everyone that's like, I don't know, every tweet or every like message I get that says like, I voted you for my champion, I believe in you, nice decks. Like all those little things, I really appreciate them. And yeah, I'm gonna try to give you those 4 packs.
Welcome back, everybody, to the HCT Winter Championship. Viper currently leads this first series of the day against Yueying 1-0 after taking that win with his Murloc Paladin. And with that win, I think that Viper has solidified a massive lead that 1-0 doesn't justify.
Yeah, the Paladin was I think the weakest deck against Yueying's lineup, and managing to get the game 1 win under your belt with it is pretty tough if you're sitting in Yueying's seat. But we just saw that piece with him, and he talked a lot about mindset in the interview, and keeping himself calm and staying focused and really just taking it game by game. And that honestly was a big trend with a lot of the players at this championship when we talked to him. Even some of the returning players, where they talked about so much about calming themselves and focusing on mindset, was a big deal, because that first time they played on stage, they didn't realize how nerve-wracking it really was.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the success we're seeing, is that with the tour stop, all the tour stops they visited this year, and the fact that they got championship experience very early on, I think it really helped them coming into this final season before we head into the World Championships, just having that experience and understanding what it's like to be there.
Yeah, then we're going to move into game number 2 here, Yueying on the Control Priest. Different from what we've been seeing thus far in the tournament, with Cloning Gallery Priest being the overwhelming favorite as a deck choice for players. And it does feel like it's a little bit better position against Hunter, mostly because of the anti-aggro tools and its ability to get through the early game. Yueying has also opted to go for the full anti-aggro package with double Wild Pyromancer, plus those early spells, and Dustbreaker. But he also has Fire 2 Witch Doctor, so has cut some of that later game punch in order to get through the early game more consistently. Yeah,
we look at the top end, it's 2 Cabal Shadow Priest, Holy Fire, Crowd Roaster, the 2 Psychic Screams, of course, 1 Primordial Drake, yeah, and then the Shadow Reaper Alexstrasza package that's in there. But I like the way that Yueying has built this, where it's very lean and concise and to the point. You know exactly what your deck wants to do, and you're trying to do that as consistently as possible. Yueying, I think, is one of the players in this tournament that clearly gave a nod to the fact that he thought aggro was going to be a force.
Yep.
And I think that while he didn't go the full way of doing that, it really shows throughout his lineup that he has paid close attention to it. The double Ferocious Howl in the Malagos Druid for the extra armor, the Blood Knight and double Tar Creeper that's in the Odd Rogue that he's bought. The fact that he's just got the extra minions in the Priest deck to keep fighting. I think this is a wonderfully built lineup that he has. And right now, he just seems to be getting the shorter end of the deal. Viper starts out with a 1-drop, has the Hatchet to add with it, has Deathstalker Rexar in hand if he needs that, and already threatening with the Scavenging Hyena in terms of his range for Viper. Yueying's got his work cut out for him this game.
Yeah, not the greatest opening hand. None of that early game that we talked about. All the burst damage effectively in the hand already with double Mind Blast Holy Fire, which actually limits his ability to close out the game in the late game without Shadow Visions to pick up extra copies of burst. And, one of the reasons why Midrange Hunter has been so popular in tournament play and on ladder is because of its flexibility. It's just such a strong deck at every part of the game. It can get crazy early starts. It has a decent mid game, has card draw, Master's Call now, and also has the ability to play a resource battle in the late game with Deathstalker Rexar.
Yeah, and Viper's list is quite different than what the rest of the players have brought to this tournament. His list looks more like a one that I first saw from Death Star, who's a streamer and player who pretty much exclusively plays Hunter. Even if, like, when Hunter was like bad, you know, like if you're one of those people who likes to follow a particular team in sports, like when your team's the worst in the league, like, and you just keep rooting for him, that's Death Star with Hunter. No matter what position it's been in, he has been playing that deck almost exclusively. And so Viper's list with double Life Drinker, double Tundra Rhina, no Savannah High Main, double Dire Frenzy, and a deadly shot with 2 hatchets, no Candle Shot.
Yeah.
The list is made to do one thing in particular, and it's have staying power that continues to chip away at your opponent quite aggressively. And I actually like this particular list in a matchup like Priest, because one of the things that Hunter struggles with is actually sticking a reasonable board. In this matchup, Viper is free to throw away some of the resources to try to get chip damage, and then later down the road, use Dire Frenzies to put important minions back into the deck, whether that's Life Drinker to sustain through Shadow Reaper Anduin, whether it's Tundra Rhinos to make sure he can get burst combos. He's pretty much got everything necessary in the deck to tackle a matchup like this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And one of the important parts about how this game is played out so far is, as I mentioned, Yueying does have limited burst because he can't pick up extra copies of Mind Blast with Shadow Visions, and that can be a problem in the late game. With Deathstalker Rexar, you can bank Rush Lifesteal minions, and you have time to do so to basically just negate the Priest's ability to burst you out of the game and slowly chip away at their life until you win. So even in a war of attrition, Viper's got his bases covered with Deathstalker Rexar already in hand. Now, he did not have that blazing fast start, but Yueying also didn't have any early game, so he's not behind by any means.
Yeah, the Priest not having early game, it definitely hurts. It's not the end of the world, though. You know, it's a deck that's built anticipating that sort of situation, which is one of the reasons that, you know, he's running the double Cabal Shadow Priest, the Holy Fire that's in there, or as Sato likes to call it, the bootlegged Ice Block, where sometimes you don't die when you play it. It's like, it feels like a GVG card with that name, where it's like, it works, unless it doesn't.
Oftentimes it works.
Yeah, and Dragon here, that's the reason why Yueying did not play the Scale Worm last turn. He was missing the Dragon in hand, picked up with Twilight Drake. And so for Viper, that's got to be a bit of like a raise your eyebrow sort of play. The Scavenging Hyena was in play last turn. The Scale Worm came from the far left. Why didn't he play it on 4 mana?
Because he didn't have a dragon.
Very possible.
That gives him a good amount of hand reading potential, because also if the dragon that he did pick up was Dustbreaker, that would have come down over the Scale Worm, almost certainly.
Unless he didn't have another dragon in hand.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's really the point I'm getting at here, is that Viper, you know, it's tough to track cards when you're on stage and there's a million different things to think about. And so for Viper, that's one of the reasons he likes to take his time, is like an order of operations thing, where you ask yourself question A, question B, question C, and then you come to a conclusion about the situation. If Viper's able to pay that close of attention and continue to track Yueying's hand, at some point he's going to be able to pinpoint almost what the exact cards in Yueying's hand are going to be, and oftentimes he's going to be able to absolutely take things like Primordial Drake and Dustbreaker out of the range for Yueying. Right now, Viper is giving still a nod to those types of situations. But I think in totality, Viper has a lot of room to work with where information's concerned.
And I had a couple lines of play in mind that last turn that Viper decided not to go with. One was just playing the Crackling Razor Maw to try and buff up the Dire Maul to make kind of that like wider board position, and using the weapon to clear off the Scale Worm. But opting to go with the second Scavenging Hyena because maybe he realizes that he may not have another opportunity to try and make a big one and get actual value off of it. Saving the Crackling Razor Maw to potentially pick up Wind Fury the next turn if Yueying wasn't able to deal with it was a big bonus to that play. It is dealt with, and now Viper has to think, well, what's my plan now? Do I get Deathstalker Rexar online and play for the late game? Don't think that's great because you want to play for tempo. Or try and build up another board full of beasts, see if your opponent can deal with it.
Yeah, I'm looking almost exactly at Life Drinker Crackling Razor Maul here from Viper. I liked his play last turn because it gave a nod to a Duskbreaker being drawn. It gave a nod to Cabal Shadow Priest being a turn 6 play. Taking away Dire Maul and contesting a Scavenging Hyena is like a nightmare situation for him. So Viper, erring on the side of caution with that. I think that Cabal Shadow Priest, a card's extremely likely to be in Yueying's hand at this point. And so for Viper, it's just how do I continue to apply enough pressure without overplaying my hand at this stage? Because if there's a point where as soon as he has a weak turn, that's where Viper is really going to fall behind. And so I think there is consideration for Deathstalker Rexar because of what you said, the late game potential in banking lifesteal minions. And then also at the same time, Life Drinker in this particular matchup against Dragon Priest, it's one of the ones you really want to Dire Frenzy to keep staving off the damage that Shadow Reaper Anduin's going to apply.
Yeah.
And here, you know, if Yueying, if his last turn was Holy Fire your 6/4, I don't really imagine Viper's too concerned about threats. You know, that Twilight Drake has to be, you know, not too surprising, but a bit of a surprise, I think, if you're in Viper's spot.
Yep. I agree.
He's going to try to go for Poisonous here.
And another reason for Deathstalker Rexar last turn was if he played a bunch of his cards to build up a board, he was going right into Psychic Scream's turn after seeing that Yueying had a slow start. So trying to bank this and hoping that Yueying didn't have a proactive play in hand.
Yeah, Viper's got a tough turn here. You know, something to think about as well is the Dire Frenzy that he just drew. If he goes for a Crackling Razormaw Spring Paw and it fails, maybe the Dire Frenzy is actually able to make it to a position where it doesn't. You know, so you got +3 attack instead of Poisonous on the minion. So with Spring Paw, Crackling Razormaw, and with Dire Frenzy, a +3 attack would be able to actually kill the minion. But Viper clearly showing he has no interest in using Dire Frenzy this turn because he plays the 1/1 that does not add an extra Spring Paw to your hand. That's my opinion.
And the reason why I didn't go for this right away, because I think he was trying to plan through his turn if he did not get Poisonous, or even what he does with the rest of his mana if he does get Poisonous is a big thing.
Wow. Dire Frenzy on the Crackling Razormaw is very interesting. So just creating board tension and adding extra Razormaws. This actually makes a lot of sense because Crackling Razormaw is such a vital minion to combating the large minions that Yueying's going to be playing. I wonder if that's a bit too cautious on Viper's end, though, just, you know, be playing for these way late game scenarios like that. It also does give him a chance to draw tempo plays as well, though. You know, the 2-mana 6/5 that Crackling Razormaw would be as a draw now.
Yeah,
that's almost 20% of the deck now.
Big tempo swing for Yueying here, able to swap with the Twilight Acolyte and value trade over with the Scale Worm. And the scary part about this is he's got an Alexstrasza to back this up.
Yeah.
So if Viper doesn't have a way to pick apart this board, he's going to take a lot of damage.
He's going to die.
And hasn't banked any zombies. And you need a few turns, usually, to get to the point where you're getting rush lifesteal.
And that's really what you talked about on turn 6, where you want to play for tempo. Viper chose to not do that. And although he would have, you know, by happenstance gotten punished from a Duskbreaker draw on Yueying's side, I do think that playing the Deathstalker Rexar did leave him vulnerable to a situation like this, where Yueying's hand was likely to be quite clunky and full of slow cards like this. Now, we're seeing that Alexstrasza is being picked up, and instead his hand was, you know, a bunch of Mind Blast and a Psychic Scream. But I think that not applying pressure to Yueying gives him a window to get aggressive. And when the Priest deck is able to attack you with a single minion, that's usually when you start finding yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
For Viper here, using health as a resource, I think, is super smart because he knows that Alexstrasza is on the horizon. Why not make use of this life that you anticipate could fall away?
Agreed. And now it just seems like he's so far behind. You can tell the expression on Viper's face. He is
concerned.
Yeah, concerned. Doesn't seem happy with the way this game is played out. And
his face looks like you when I say something really dumb. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Oh, God, why?
I have to sit here for another hour and do this? Yeah, all right. I guess it's not that bad. Both players just have looked intensely focused throughout this set so far. 11. Yikes. Can Viper actually even answer this and stay alive?
He can, but it's ugly.
Is it double kill command?
It's double kill command.
Oh.
He could kill command, flanking strike, double spring paw trade into the Twilight Drake.
I'm thinking at this stage, Viper might need to roll and then just evaluate afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of some beasts that could, pretty much hit Jin in this situation. And the big one I'm thinking about is what's his name? The 8/8 Bittertide Hydra with Lifesteal.
So you're saying Bittertide Hydra plus Vicious Scale Hide?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, that doesn't really play for tempo. That takes more of a risk. And I think playing for tempo is wiser right now. If Viper can get a turn from his opponent where, Yueying Psychic Screams, I think that Viper's overall pretty thrilled with that.
Yeah. But turns out there's a Crowd Roaster in hand, which matches up perfectly with this Scavenging Hyena.
It does line up pretty well for Viper, though, gets to swing it back with Flanking Strike and Spring Paw.
But at this point, I think he needs to start looking with those zombies.
Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot about that. Oh, gosh.
8-4, 7-4 on board.
Well, all right. That technically answers things, but you take a lot of damage doing it.
Yeah. Which he can't afford to take a lot of damage because Yueying is just
roll a
one
beast
damage
time.
off lethal. All bad. All bad.
Taunt?
Taunt, but
does the taunt take 2 hits? Nope. Well, it could. That does an adapt effect.
Yeah, and I think that's his only option.
No, his option is going to be, well, Yueying doesn't often have 2 Mind Blasts in hand. But in this case, I guess it's 1 when I think about it.
It's just 1.
Yeah.
It's only 1.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an even score. Ouch. Stop hitting yourself. I'll stop hitting him. Yueying ties it up to 1 apiece. Pretty ugly start on Yueying's side, but the mid game went exceptionally well as Viper really wasn't able to get significant pressure going. And then from there, it was just a snowball effect. It was the giant endgame cards that really had massive impact.
I think the turning point there had to be the Deathstalker Rexar play. Viper gave up all tempo, all initiative in order to bank Deathstalker Rexar, that mana, to create zombies, but never had an opportunity to get an impactful zombies. And imagine if he had gone wide on the board, sure, Dustbreaker punishes him, Psychic Scream punishes him, but then later on in the game, he can use Deathstalker Rexar to help with that tempo advantage and get those resources out. I can't tell right now if it's the right play. It's hard to go through all the iterations of what could possibly happen. But I think that's the play that we have to look at when seeing that series, seeing Viper's good start, and seeing it fall away so quickly.
Yeah, I think a big thing to look at there is just, how things would have ended up going in that specific scenario and trying to take a look at it overhead. If Viper had gone for Life Drinker, Crackling Razor Maw on that turn, he would have ended up sometimes with a minion that lives through Duskbreaker on the Life Drinker side. So, I think that even in the face of Duskbreaker, you end up with a pretty decent turn. That probably would have come down for Yueying on the follow, which meant that Twilight Drake would not have come down.
Exactly.
Which meant that the Alexstrasza might not have hit on 9, which meant that, Yueying might have found himself playing defense for a much larger portion of that game than what we ended up seeing. And I do think that the Deathstalker Rexar it's a bit optimistic. I don't want to say it's conservative or safe. I actually think it's quite aggressive to just play a Deathstalker Rexar there, where you're so confident in your hand that you're going to get out of that situation. If Viper had the Deadly Shot in his deck in his hand at that point, I could totally see playing that Deathstalker Rexar. It was the fact that he couldn't handle a big minion that really concerned me about it.
Yeah. No Hunter's Mark in the deck, but did have a Deadly Shot. But not much removal as we talked about with that list. But let's move into the next matchup. Game 3. Hunter for Yueying and this Malygos Rogue.
Yeah, it's
for Viper. This is a tough matchup.
It's an interesting deck, and if you haven't seen this deck piloted before, it wins in a very specific way every single time when it tries to win. It gets a Kobold Illusionist out, a 4-mana 3/3 that says Death Rattle. Put a copy of a minion from your hand into play as a 1/1. And so the goal there is to activate that Death Rattle multiple times. And you're going to use Necrium Blade, which is a 3-mana 3/2 weapon that says Death Rattle. Trigger one of your friendly minions' Death Rattles. And a card, Necrium Vial, 5-mana rogue spell. Trigger one of your friendly minions' Death Rattles twice. The goal is to get Malygos in your hand, play that Kobold Illusionist, have Malagos be the only minion in your hand, make multiple Malagis, and throw some burn spells at him. In the meantime, you play a lot of just cycle through your deck effects, even to the effect of Roll the Bones is in here.
Yeah, basically as much card draw as you can fit in. Fan of Knives, Roll the Bones, Shiv, Elven Minstrel, technically a draw card, Sprint. It's just all card draw all the time, and Elven Minstrel is really the card that makes it all work.
The bread and butter.
You only have 2 minions in the deck, 3 if you count the second Elven Minstrel, and that's Malagos and Kobold Illusionist. You need that to pull those out of your deck so your average draw is better. Then you need a Death Rattle activator, whether it's Necreum Blade or Necreum Vial.
Yeah.
So that's how it works, and it just needs to stay alive until that point. But it doesn't have the best ways to stay alive. It has no life gain. It has limited removal. That's pretty much all single target outside of the 2 vanishes, which come much later in the game.
All tempo oriented.
All tempo oriented, and that's where the deck tends to fall flat. When it's given a lot of time against those control decks, even against other combo decks, it oftentimes does its combo faster, but it has very little in the ways of defense.
I do like it though. You know, this is one of my, honestly, I'll call it my guilty pleasure deck of the format, where I know that queuing into ladder, it's usually a bad idea, as there's just so many aggressive decks that get played on ladder. But it's a blast to play. And in this matchup, you know, not quite as much so, but Yueying's start is pretty darn slow. With double Savannah Highmane, Sap buys Viper a lot of time to keep pushing through this. And so Yueying just even goes to the effect of just using Timberwolf to try to push some extra damage, and that's the best way to end up doing this, because with 2 evasions in deck, there's a chance that wide board states do not have an opportunity to really get much done. But Viper has finally fallen to a turn where there's no cycle and there's not really anything to do, and danger is now a very real thing.
But the bright side of all that is Viper is a single draw away from winning the game on the spot. With Prep Necreum Vial, if he draws Kobold Illusionist,
Elven Minstrel is good too.
And holds on to the Necreum Blade. He'd have to have the 3 Death Rattle activations in order to win the game. So 29.
If he pushed, so I just want to like do a hypothetical here. Let's say he'd push 3 damage to face to drop him to 26, and then you dagger up and drop him to 25.
That would be enough for just Necreum Vial, because each of those Sinister Strikes is 13 damage, so it'd be 26.
Yeah, so
you'd have 2 Malagos on them.
So in my opinion, I think that Viper actually could have swung with this Necreum Vial here.
Necreum Blade.
I'm sorry, the Necreum Blade to face, and then actually just gone with Dagger, kill the Timberwolf next turn, try to buy some more life. But as it stands, it looks like he is playing solely for the Kobold Illusionist out, and now the not swinging with Necreum Vial to either hit face or hit a minion looks pretty disastrous, and he's dead.
He's not dead yet. He can sap a Spring Paw.
So you sap Spring Paw, kill Timberwolf. You drop to 7. You're staring at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the other side of the board. So, that's the only play to live.
I don't think you even kill the Spring Paw.
You have to. You have to. I mean, the Timberwolf. You have to kill the Timberwolf.
It'd be 7 on board if you don't kill the Timberwolf.
Yes, you're correct.
So, and I honestly think he needs. This is smart. This is smart. Because he needs the extra 3 or he needs the extra Death Rattle activation for his Kobold Illusionist out.
It's in the face of, okay.
Okay.
It was in the face of a Deathstalker Rexar being played, or in the face of a taunt minion hitting the battlefield. That was why Viper chose to play the Blade that way. But either way, he doesn't draw the key card, and that's it. You know, the deck is, at its heart of hearts, a combo deck. It needs to draw Kobold Illusionist at some point, and that's why Elven Minstrel is such a vital card. It provides you with either Kobold Illusionist Malagos or the other Elven Minstrel, which will find those.
And you can assume that that match is going to go the way of a loss. Very tough matchup. The hardest matchup in the lineups outside of Odd Rogue, which he banned away. So now Viper has to try and target this Malagos Druid with his final 2 decks in order to take a win, which is definitely possible.
It definitely is, but you know, the work's cut out for him. I think with the Malagos Rogue, he gets slowed down by the armor gain from Yueying quite a bit, although he's still able to reach, you know, heights of, 80, 90 damage with Malagos Rogue.
Yeah.
And with the Hunter deck, I think with the double Dire Frenzy, double Life Drinker, double Tundra Rhino version, that it is a bit more of an advantage than the usual mid-range Hunter would have.
Yeah, I definitely agree there, but Can Viper prey on this Malagos Druid to make a comeback in this series? Or will Yueying just close this one out and book his ticket to the quarterfinals? We're going to find out right after this.
大家好，我是来自 LF 的Yueying，我是来自中国。这次我带的所有卡组都是我自己特别擅长的卡组，所以我觉得在这种比赛上应该拿出自己最擅长的东西。我觉得我这套牌是比较万金油的，就是没有说特别烈，也没有说特别好打，但是可能打基础防战会比较难，所以除了基础防战以外的所有卡组，我觉得都可以。 就是有一套可能蓝龙德或者是激素贼这两套可能会大家会带的比较少，因为这两套牌的话也就只有2位选手，就每个一位带了这两套牌中的一套，但并没有人同时带了这两套。我觉得是有一套元素萨的话，就是这一次可能都没有带。之前我在亚服天梯遇到过，我的中速列打这套元素萨的胜率是0，就是打了3把在。 亚服的前50分段，所以我觉得这套牌是大家都忽视的，应该蛮强。我平常的练习一般都是打天梯，就是大数据有时候会看，但是不会太参考这个，我都是根据自己的理解，然后觉得哪一张卡更适合这个卡组。我的风格以前的话是快攻，然后就是偏快的，但现在的话慢慢的话我就转成中速，可能以后也可能会往控制 比较慢的方面发展，就我觉得一个职业选手应该要全面一点，什么都要会。我觉得最重要的就是心态，如果你的心态不好的话，可能会打出一些不是你该有水平的操作。信心就是在天梯中连胜，虽然可能没有那么有信心，但是你可以调整你的自己的心态。输的比较多，你可以先缓一缓，然后过段时间然后再打，尽量不要被 前面的失利影响到接下来的比赛，就在我每一局的比赛中，我会保持最高的专注，然后打好每一个操作。我希望大家以后继续关注我的比赛，谢谢。
I'm Viper. I'm from Magdeburg in Germany.
And Viper goes up 2-0 very quickly.
I would have loved to bring something like Control Mage or like those decks. No one would have ever expected them. So I knew I'm gonna be playing with Noblord, and Noblord is known to be expected to bring decks like Hakar Druid or Topsy Turvy Priest, Quest Rogue. The Shaman is just really, or control decks in general, are just really bad against that. So I couldn't allow myself to bring control decks to this tournament, sadly. I think the thing I'm worried the most about is the Paladin deck. My Secret Archmage and my Hunter deck, I just expect them to win, and I expect one of them to be banned every time, so that's fine. The Malagos Rogue is kind of just, it beats every combo deck, it beats every control deck, and it's like okay-ish versus the even mid-rangey decks. It's definitely unfavored, but it can win games. Ever since I started playing Hearthstone, I think I got a lot of criticism because when I thought something is good, I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna play it. It has like good stats for me, and I think it's good, and I have a reason for it being good. And sometimes one card looks very crazy. Sometimes you just put one of those cards in your deck, and then a lot of matchups change. They have to fear me just finding a new deck for a strategy that seemed to be impossible before. At this champs again, almost no one thought aggro decks are gonna be a thing, so they went all greedy and control or anti-control, essentially anti-control most of the time. And yeah, no, I was the guy no one was ever expecting to bring aggro, and I think that's kind of what the lineups I brought. And now if you have Quest Rogue or Resurrect Priest or Death Rattle Hunter, you go up against my decks and you look at them and kind of feel like, well, I lost. I can't do anything, so I'm just gonna devastate my opponents.
Welcome back, everybody, to the HCT Winter Championship. This is the first match of the day between Viper and Yueying, the winner's match for Group A. The winner of this match will move on to the quarterfinals. Loser will move down to the decider match of the group, still trying to fight it out for a spot in the top 8. Right now, Yueying has the Malagos Druid left to win this series, and he's got to take a win against either Malagos Rogue or the mid-range Hunter. Both can be pretty tough matchups. I think Malygos Druid, Malygos Rogue's not one we have too much data on. But Malygos Druid seems like a deck that's going to give a lot of time, but it also can gain a lot of armor.
Yes, and, you know, kind of with taking more time now with the change to Wild Growth and the change to Nourish, it does give a lot more time as a result of that, and really the way you speed that up is with exactly Twig of the World Tree.
Yeah.
Wild Growth and Nourish now at 3 and 6 mana are much more fair cards, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. But against Viper's deck, they do function very similarly to how they did in other matchups, where Viper's not really so concerned about dying as much as he is about delivering a killing blow. So for Viper, it is about finding Elven Minstrel to thin out the deck, but he doesn't need it. But here's already got Kobold Illusionist and Malygos. So now for Viper, it's about finding Razor Petal Volley and ways to activate Death Rattles.
Yep.
And there you see some of the, I guess, wacky cards that end up making it into this deck. Roll the Bones is strictly there as a card draw effect. And instead of it being Novice Engineer, you want it to be Roll the Bones exactly. So that way you do not have extra minions in your deck. It's paramount that Kobold Illusionist has a clear hand with only Malygos at that stage. You're going to see Viper do things like dagger up and attack a lot, and eventually get that Necrim Vial online to activate Kobold Illusionist, and just keep going from there. Lots of damage buffed with, you know, a couple copies of Malygos, and you're looking at, I think the maximum I've done with this deck is like 82 or something like that. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, it is a pretty weird deck, but it also has the potential to go faster with this combo than almost any other deck. We've all seen the highlights of Zarek's Cloning Gallery Priest on turn 8, cloning out Cloning Gallery, getting the Malygos Spell and double Radiant Elemental and just killing you from whatever life total you may be at.
It's tough to do that with that particular deck.
With Malygos Rogue, you could do that way quicker. You could do it sometimes as early as like turn 6.
Yeah, the massive difference is that Viper is so much more susceptible to aggression than Cloning Gallery Priest is. Cloning Gallery Priest has great tools to fight off aggression, you know, between Spirit Lash, with, you know, a copy of Ziliax in there to help fight, the fact that you have Mass Hysteria and Psychic Scream. Viper has just Vanish. And if you've been watching those cartoons that we have sometimes in the break, and they vanish, and you hear that guy in the background go, "Yeah, they're still dead, though." Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, sometimes it does.
So Volley picked up, and Viper looking at that sprint next turn. How does he get the hand empty enough to be able to use Razor Petal Volley and sprint? And so that tells me that Razor Petal Volley's off the menu this turn. I did want to talk about the sap last turn, but honestly, the more I thought about it, the less sense it made. You want to backstab and kill a Dream Petal Florist. But he doesn't have that luxury anymore unless he wants a Razor Petal Volley.
Well, he can Razor Petal Volley and empty out the Razor Petals.
So you would backstab Razor Petal and use a dagger.
Yeah, to hold on to one of the Razor Petals.
You kind of want to sap, though.
Yeah.
There's not really any sap targets in this deck.
Could use Eviscerate, but it's kind of similar to the Razor Petal Volley in that sense.
We saw Viper use Eviscerates yesterday for defense, and it you know, was costing him a lot in the games that he'd used Eviscerate, and that's often a tool that you pretty much want to burn your saps and you want to burn the rest of it before you use Eviscerates. That's almost an emergency tool when you have to use it for defense.
Yeah. But Dream Petal Forest, very dangerous card to leave up on the board.
Whoa. Whoa. So this tells me that Viper's actually comfortable in this spot because of Razor Petal Volley, where he feels like that's going to be enough gas to get it done. I'm not sure I agree. Wow. That being said, I don't have a ton of reps on this deck. You know, I have a lot more than I'm willing to admit because it's, you know, kind of, on ladder, it's an embarrassing deck to play where you just die to every single aggro deck. But the one thing I have remembered very much is that when I use Eviscerates and I use Sinister Strikes, I often don't find myself winning games.
Yeah. And you could tell Yueying's game plan right away. He played a Arcane Tyrant on turn 5 to try and get damage. Instead of going with Ferocious Alpha Cycle through his deck, he's just playing 2 minions, getting the guaranteed discount on the Malygos, and hero powering for that extra damage.
Well, that is a pretty big draw for Viper now. So Viper's game plan has become much more concise in the last turn, which is now that there's 2 Razor Petal Volleys, it's about getting those active and finding a way to activate Death Rattles. but I think he needs multiple Death Rattles or this isn't going to work. And now he's got to find a way to get Elven Minstrels out of hand in the meantime as well. Because if you have more minions in your hand, the Kobold Illusionist does not guaranteed summon the Malygos from hand. And that's probably the reason that Viper's held Backstab, is as another activation on Kobold Illusionist for an additional Malygos in this spot.
This is a rough hand. No preparations picked up either. He needs multiple turns to thin his hand out in order to get that combo even active, and beyond that, he needs the damage, so he needs time to play the Razor Petal volleys as well. This is going to be tough, and he's got to be scared because Yueying has now played the Dream Petal Force twice, which he would really only do that if he had a key minion in his hand.
Well, I mean, I think you could have very easily done it just for pressure in this spot.
And he's gonna give up a card.
I think that's wise. I don't think there's a card in the deck other than preparation that really makes a difference at this point. I think the backstab is making a bigger difference by activating Kobold Illusionist for an additional Death Rattle.
I would agree, and the backstab there would be useless because you'd backstab for 2 damage and then no follow-up.
Yeah. You would be trading backstab for a random card next turn in your deck. You already have the most important cards.
And I can assume that this is a plus attack.
Oh,
wait.
Oh, so I'm curious what the armor plays around in terms of sequencing. He has seen double Eviscerate and a Sinister Strike, so that would require Viper to actually use Razor Petal Volleys, and I'm not sure this actually changes the clock for Yueying, where he's got 6 from hand with the Malygos, he's got 7 sitting on board with 1. The 4 extra attack this turn would have set him to 17, and then, you know, I think that Yueying's anticipating Vanish this turn, so he would have been using the Branching Path strictly for that 4 damage. So is there a difference on Malygos math? It's 17 and 21.
I wonder.
And with a swipe pickup, that would be 15, 16 from the hero power? Not really.
Okay, fair enough. What about card draw then? He needs to pick up the burn damage to end the game. Maybe he found a breakpoint in Viper's damage?
I think that's likely what it is.
But it's so hard to account for it.
Well, again, 2 Eviscerates and a Sinister Strike have been used, so that leaves 1 Sinister Strike and then Razor Petal Volleys. The Razor Petal Volleys are hard to get going when you have 8 mana and 10 cards in hand.
But the thing is that's hard to pinpoint is how many geese can he summon?
Let's assume 2.
Well, if he assumes 2, which I guess is like the average at that point, you haven't seen a Necrium Blade. So maybe you can put him on Prep Necrium Vial and a Backstab. That's 3. It's so hard to calculate those breakpoints, especially when you're trying to figure out your own game plan.
So 1 Razor Petal Volley with 3 geese would be 32 damage.
Slow play, still not getting the Elven Minstrels out.
I don't think he had an option other than to Vanish this turn. Especially if your opponent's willing to Branching Pass for armor in that spot, you definitely need to look up and go, I think my opponent can do something that is going to pretty much put a big hurt in my plan. And so for Yueying, a lot of this comes down to how do you want to play out this turn? Would you rather have the additional minion in play with like a Spreading Plague? That card's basically dead in the matchup. Or would you rather...
You could. Spreading Plague or Keen Tyrant naturalize your 1/5.
Draw cards. So burn a card here intentionally. That card doesn't really matter at this stage anymore. And finds more burn. So now the question is, draw the card or deal the extra damage. I don't think the extra damage matters. Swipe, Moonfire is 15, Hero Power is 16, and then
second
the Arcade Tyrant.
Second Moonfire would be 21 as well.
So that's what Yueying was thinking about. Was that that's an important Hero Power because now if this 4/3 connects one more time to Viper's face, Yueying has lethal from hand.
Yep, lethal next turn. So Viper has to deal with this. Has to part ways with a sap if he wants to stay alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting pretty ugly for Viper's spot. It's like it's like swing, Necrium Vial, sap. And honestly, you might load up the Necrium Vial and just swing, so that way, if you're in a desperate situation, you can at least risk the Kobold Illusionist from Malygos and just hope that the Malygos are the ones that come out of this.
Yeah, he needs to bank away some mana as well with playing the Razor Petal Volleys in order to get some through. So we'd have exactly 4 mana remaining.
He's got to deal more than 32 damage as well.
So
42 in this instance.
1 Malygos with 4 Razor Petals will only be 24 damage.
Yeah, I'm looking at 2 geese getting summoned eventually here. So Viper is going to go with the most mana efficient play.
There once
No minions left in deck to fetch.
Which gives Yueying a lot of information.
So now Yueying needs to connect with 5 more damage to have lethal.
So
that's not damage.
Yeah, a Moonfire would have been enough, or a swipe. Malgus cost 0.
Yeah, and now I start really looking at, once again, towards the like spreading plagues to power out Tyrant.
Wait, no, he has the backstab as well for the first Malgus.
Oh, Yueying just gonna go in. So Moonfire and Nourish. Yueying is drawing for the second Moonfire. And he found it! Yueying 3-1 over Viper with aggressive play. And I'll tell you what, I think Yueying's technical play has been pretty on point in this series.
I definitely agree.
Viper, you know, I think the victim of some unfortunate draws with the Malagos Rogue, but it is a feast or famine combo deck. If you do not get the right draws, you are going to fall with that deck. Especially if Yueying has got, you know, pretty much just good pressure like he had that game. It was the Wild Growth into the Arcane Tyrant to start drawing cards, playing Dream Petal Florist. Got the goods.
Yeah, well played, and he moves on 2-0 out of his group. And a fun stat that we picked up during the break, there's only been 2 players from China all time that have 2-0'd their groups in the current form HCT system, which is Jason Zhou in 2017 summer, who had 2 top 4 World Championship appearances, and Xiao Ti last year in summer, who's already going to the World Championship based on points leader. So a pretty big shoes to fill for Yueying when it comes to 2-0 in groups.
See, to me, I feel like those shoes got filled here. I think Yueying's playing fantastic, and he joins an elite group of players from China who hold that similar style that he's had. And from what I've seen so far, Yueying has just brought solid decks, and he's played very solid. That's typically a winning combination that often a player that I look up to in terms of learning from, Zalay, preaches. Fundamentals, ABC Hearthstone. Play good Hearthstone and play it well with the good decks. You'll pick up some games.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Yueying's been doing thus far. Moving on, first place in Group A. And for now, let's send it over for an interview with Yueying.
Thanks a lot, TJ. So first off, congratulations on the win. But I'd just like to ask, how were you feeling going into this matchup? Because Viper's lineup is quite strange.
就是首先恭喜你，非常恭喜你进入8强。然后，他想问一下，就是在对阵 Viper 的时候，你有什么特别感觉？因为他这次带了一个比较奇怪的 lineup。
我觉得他这套牌其实是蛮正常的，因为蓝龙贼的话，其实打控制特别好打，因为他是斩杀特别高嘛，然后配合3块，我觉得他是这个思路蛮正常的。
He has made a good choice.
Oh, sorry. Use this one. Mike's not working. I'll take this.
I think actually he made a good choice because Mali Rogue is pretty good against control decks. Yeah.
Okay, and just in terms of your team, how important do you feel it's been to be on a team of the caliber that you are, of how powerful it is with players such as Xiao Ti and Sai Miao?
就我们知道你是和LF 的小 T 以及菜喵是在同一个战队的，然后你觉得就是加入这个战队，对你的炉石就是竞技有什么帮助吗？
我从他们身上学到了很多，就是可能不一样的打法和理解，所以还是很多帮助的。
I've learned a lot from my teammates. Actually, like their playstyle and their skill set. Yeah, that's very helpful.
And now that you're moving into top 8, how confident are you feeling to be able to get that top 4 spot and book a spot to the World Championships?
你现在已经成功晋级了8强，那你现在就是对于闯入4强有多大的信心？
应该算是100%信心。
I'm 100% confident.
Okay, then big words from Yueying there. So congratulations once again on the victory. And we'll go back over to TJ and Admirable.